Gets even more ludicrous. Like, we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well where nobody's found her. We hid her so well. Like, we
Wow. Let's listen again.
To move it to a more remote place.
Gets even more ludicrous. Like, we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well where nobody's found her. We hid her so well that we then decided we'd move her in the car, which we hired weeks later. And, you know, it's just ridiculous.
Here we have an embedded confession, the likes of which we've never seen before on the channel. Not only is it detailed, but she put everything in the past tense. So she didn't say, well, if we had done that, or if we did that. She says, we did this, we did that, we did X, Y, and Z. But also, she used the word well. Well is something that we've developed over the course of 15 videos, hours of watching the McCanns, and nothing but the McCanns' own words. And based on the words they use, the expressions they choose to use, their leakage, we came up on this channel with the theory that Madeleine is likely in a well or a deep, dark crevice somewhere. And now we have Kate using the word well. This might seem like a big leap to you, but it is the payoff of hours of analysis of nothing but their own words, not newspaper rumors or third parties saying things, but things that they've said themselves. Can we catch the McCanns in a confession? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze one of the most recent documentaries about the missing Madeleine McCann case. We've already watched the first 9 minutes of it, but we've yet to see the embedded confession I was told by my subscriber and member of the channel, Mel, is in this video. So we're still waiting for the pièce de résistance of this documentary. So let's watch and see if we can catch it. Last time we paused right here where Kate was discovering that Madeleine was missing from her bedroom.
Into the room and reveal that the shutter was all the way up and the window being pushed right across. And then I just knew she'd been taken. I ran to the window. I've no idea what I expected to find or see. You know, you just hope you're going to see your child every second. Whizzed around the apartment in about 10 seconds. Again, I don't quite know because, you know, I knew in my head that someone had taken her. I don't know if...
And just to fill anyone who's new to the channel in, this is our 16th video in the Madeleine McCann series. The playlist is called DD vs. the McCanns. You can find it in the pinned comment below. It's the first link. And I'll just fill everyone in quickly. I believe that the McCanns are responsible for their daughter's death and that they covered it up. So when Kate tells this story about Madeleine McCann, about going into the bedroom and discovering that her daughter wasn't there, I believe that this story is scripted. And I've done multiple videos now about the ways to tell that a story is scripted.
I don't know if I kind of hope.
For example, you'll notice how Kate leaves out I. So she just says, whizzed around the apartment. When people leave out the word I, it is a red flag for deception because they are not technically placing themselves into their story. I is one of the most common words we use when we're talking just in general. I think, I was, I want to. We use I routinely. So when someone leaves out I, we need to be aware of it. And if you've pre-ordered the Deception Deck at deceptiondeck.com, that is going to be one of the cards in the Deception Deck, I, the importance of the word I. So listen here for where Kate uses I and then doesn't use it.
Every second. Whizzed around the apartment in about...
whizzed around the apartment. She doesn't say I whizzed around the apartment, just whizzed around the apartment. That is a small indicator, or it suggests that this didn't actually happen. Also notice how vague it is. She says whizzed, which is a vague term, around the apartment in about 10 seconds. So not only does she not say I, but it's vague. Whiz, what is whizzing? In about 10 seconds, so not even a definitive period of time. If this were a real story of a mother looking for her daughter in the room, I would expect it to be more detailed, and I would expect her to say I. I ran around the apartment, not whizzed, right? I ran around the apartment. I looked under the bed. I checked all the cupboards. I peered over the windowsill to check to make sure Madeleine wasn't on the other side of the windowsill somehow.
About 10 seconds. Again, I don't quite know because, I knew in my head that's going to take.
And vagueness is another card in the deception deck. So thank you to everyone who has pre-ordered their deck. They're still on schedule to ship by the time said on the website. And because the deck is on pre-sale right now, there is a sale during the pre-sale. So if you want to pick it up, please do. Thank you to everyone who's done it. It supports the channel. And videos like this are demonetized by YouTube because I'm watching a news report. So when you guys buy the merchandise from deceptiondeck.com, it supports the channel and helps me carve out the time to create these videos more and more often during the week rather than once or twice a week like I used to do before I left YouTube.
Taken her. I don't know if I kind of hoped that maybe she was hiding in a cupboard or something. And then I just legged it out the back of the apartment. And then as soon as I saw Jerry and our friends at the table, I was just screaming, Madeleine's gone, someone's taken it.
It's interesting here that Kate says that she wasn't screaming until she saw everyone at the table. Does this mean she's lying? No. However, I would expect a mother who's searching frantically around the apartment and not able to find her daughter to be screaming and shouting already, not running however many meters it is between the restaurant and the apartment before she starts screaming. I think a hoaxer, someone who's trying to sell the story that her daughter's been kidnapped, would start screaming once there's an audience. Because then she looks like a distressed mother, whereas an actual distressed mother would be screaming and shouting and calling for Madeleine and crying and yelling long before, crying out for Madeleine, long before she gets all the way to the tapas bar where there's an audience. Also, if this is your first video here, just note that I don't make my opinions lightly. We're 16 videos in. We've analyzed almost 20 hours now. I've analyzed the McCanns almost for an entire day before I get to these strong opinions that I think the parents are hoaxers. And the first video I made a month ago. Right, so we've been looking at them for a month regarding many of their statements in multiple interviews across long periods of time.
"10 o'clock at night, in the dark, in a foreign country."
And I was just screaming, Madeleine's gone, someone's taken it.
Kate McCann was running to tell her husband their daughter Madeleine had disappeared from the villa where she'd been sleeping.
Yeah, Kate was clearly distraught and I jumped up.
Even in this reenactment, it shows her only screaming once she gets to the table in front of an audience, which is odd.
But just kind of disbelief. She can't be gone. She can't possibly. How could she be gone? It's the furthest thing from your mind. And I was saying that to Kate as we were both running.
Did you think that there?
I've seen clips of this documentary in other videos we've analyzed, I think. So I'm not going to pause and comment on every single slip of the tongue that they have in this video, just because I've hit it so many times before. And I know lots of my regular viewers and members of the channel have seen me commentate the same things. For example, where Jerry says you, right? It's the furthest thing from your mind instead of it was the furthest thing from my mind, which is an indicator that he's not speaking from personal experience. So some of those things I will let slide. If you catch them yourself and you haven't seen me point it out before, do drop it in the comments, just so I know that you guys are catching stuff that you learned in previous videos, or you're just catching stuff because you have a good instinct for it, if this is your first time watching one of my videos. But just be aware, moving forward through this documentary, I won't point out every single slip of the tongue because I think we've seen little bits and pieces of this interview in other videos we've done on the channel.
There must be some confusion. She must be there somewhere.
Yeah. I just thought she can't have been taken. That doesn't happen. You just think it doesn't happen. And but Kate saying she's gone, someone's taken her.
The McCann's friends began a frantic search. The Ocean Club's manager initiated an emergency warning system, mobilising 60 staff searching the club, the beach and surrounds. Police joined the search 2 hours later.
They were looking for a child that had wandered away. That's what everybody thought must have happened. She'd wandered away, and that was the focus, really, of what they were looking for, a child that had wandered away.
Paul Luckman is the editor of the Portugal News. He was one of the first journalists on the scene.
When did you first see the McCanns?
I saw Kate McCann with one of the friends, with his arm around her, comforting her. I got a photograph of it.
And Kate looked out of her mind.
She was very distressed and being comforted, and it was running around really. Look, what mum wouldn't be pretty much out of their mind at the thought you lost a child?
What was Kate doing? Was she inside or outside the apartment?
She was outside the apartment.
Was she interacting with police?
Yes, interacting to some degree. I think the police were trying to take it very gently.
Regarding the Portuguese police, this reporter said two good things. First, he said that everyone was treating it as a child that wandered off, which it was most likely to be. Of all the scenarios, that is the most likely, that the kid wandered off. And that contrasts with what the McCanns have said since day one, right? Even Kate said when she arrived at the tapas bar, she said, someone's taken Madeleine. So even that early on, she was conclusive about an abduction. Whereas real parents of missing children, and we've seen this in a previous video, in the McCann series where I compared the McCanns to actual parents of missing children. I think it was What Do Innocent Parents Look Like? Leave open all possibilities because they don't know what happened. So Kate's conclusiveness that Madeleine was abducted is a giant red flag of a hoax.
The whole focus was on a little girl that had got lost, wandered away and got lost in a strange place.
From the start, the police investigation had significant failings. Instead of closing off the apartment as a crime scene, dozens of people came and went, trampling through the rooms and the yard, searching for any sign of Madeleine. In the process, recoverable evidence was destroyed, vital clues lost forever.
So it was not at the beginning considered a crime?
No.
Or a crime scene?
No, it really wasn't. And we all know that, and including the Portuguese police, will freely admit in those first few days, yes, they did trample all over because they're looking for the little girl. Nobody even considered this could be something else.
Yeah, and I don't fault. Really, I think the Portuguese police did the right thing early on. It looked like a girl who wandered off, and so they treated it that way, right? They searched the room, making sure she wasn't playing hide and seek or fell behind a piece of furniture or got trapped, somewhere in the apartment in a crevice. And then once the detectives got involved, they began to suspect the parents, which statistically, when something happens to a child, those are the top culprits. They should be the main suspects. So they rightfully turned their attention onto the McCanns. And then, as we know, if you've seen the series, other people got involved. If you've seen my video, How to Derail an Investigation, you'll see how foreign meddling seems to have derailed the Portuguese investigation and forced everyone, even the British media, to take their attention off the parents. So kind of like this reporter, I don't fault the Portuguese police for trampling through the bedroom and looking for Madeleine, because A, at that point in time, that was the most likely scenario, that she wandered off or she was still hiding somewhere in the apartment. And then once that was out, once the apartment itself was cleared, the most likely scenario is that the parents did something to their daughter. Whether it was deliberate or due to negligence and there was a cover-up or any other number of things. Little kids spend 99% of their time with their parents. If something happens to them, 99% of the time, it's the fault of the parents.
It wasn't until 4:30 the next morning that roadblocks were put in place, 6.5 hours after Madeleine disappeared.
One policeman said to me, look, if the child was abducted, 1 hour later she's in Spain. Long before we've any time to close off the roads, start saying, well, we're still looking for a little girl lost in the field next door, they'd be halfway across Spain. Or going down towards Algeciras into North Africa. Probably would have been most of the way there. We have motorways all the way.
The next day, the world's media had descended on Praia da Luz. It was a situation Portugal had never experienced. The privileged child of respected British professionals had gone missing without a trace.
Please continue to pray for Madeleine. She's lovely.
This is something that just didn't fit the stereotypical idea that many people might have.
All right, so now we have another cameo. Speaking of my video, How to Derail an Investigation, here is the culprit that I think is persuasive enough of a powerhouse of persuasion and bullying to actually derail an investigation. And this is Clarence Mitchell, who came from the British Foreign Office to ostensibly help the McCanns deal with the Portuguese police, Portuguese media, and then was eventually hired full-time by the McCanns to be their PR man because he was so effective.
Now, wrongly, that sort of family doesn't have this happen to them.
Clarence Mitchell has represented the family for nearly a decade. He says the tide of public opinion turned very quickly on the McCanns.
Once it was reported that they weren't with the children, then the judgment squad kicked in and they were guilty of neglect at the very least.
The couple's stoicism in front of the cameras didn't help.
The British police said to them, before they did any television interviews, a perpetrator of a kidnap will watch the media coverage of the distressed relatives to get a sexual kick from seeing the distress they've caused. They were warned about this and they were told by the British authorities, if you can, try not to show overt emotion.
Strange. Typically when people meet with the press, especially parents of missing children, the idea is to garner as much sympathy as possible. Even parents faking how much they need help, right? Like they need help. They're begging, they're bullying, they're cajoling. And I don't think that anyone would actually give people advice not to show emotion when they're literally doing an appeal to the press for precisely that reason, to garner sympathy from the public and entice them to help with the investigation. All that said, let's say they did get that advice. Could parents who are actually that distressed actually act stoic for that reason? Who knows? But on this channel, we don't analyze body language because it's so subjective, and body language is useful for communication, but there is no single bit of body language that indicates deception. So the fact that the parents are stoic or very composed does not factor into my analysis at all. The only thing that factors into my analysis is what they say. because whereas there's only a certain number of bodily movements someone can do, right? They can blink or look to the left or look to the right or, stretch or fold their arms. When it comes to words, the average English speaker has a vocabulary of about 30,000 words. So the precise words they pick in the milliseconds it takes to compose a sentence are much more insightful than subjective body language because they're picking from many, many options, thousands of options, specific words. Or on the other side of the same token, they're not saying something, which we also need to be aware of, right? The dog that's not barking. What are they not saying? What are they studiously avoiding talking about? Or what are they insisting on talking about? Like I said earlier, the fact that they insisted that someone abducted Madeleine without any clear proof, right? Other friends of theirs were checking the bedroom. How were they sure that one of the friends who checked the bedroom before them isn't the one who took Madeleine and stored her somewhere? Or accidentally tripped and stumbled onto Madeleine, knocked her head in, decided to hide the body as not to be punished by the parents and opened the window to make it look like a stranger abduction. The fact that they never considered, even for a moment, any of these other possibilities is the red flag, is the sign of a hoax, the conclusiveness of it all, especially that early on. So the fact that they're stoic in front of the press doesn't factor into my analysis. That said, I can understand why people thought it was weird, and it is weird. It's actually unusual for parents of a missing child to be this stoic. Even if they're asked to be that stoic, not many could do that.
People described you as cold and poker-faced.
I don't think I had a day for literally 18 months where I didn't have a prolonged period crying. I've learned that people judge, very readily, and what you see on camera, isn't the full story.
There were prolonged periods for several days where Kate was, my mum said, was like howling like a wild animal with grief and despair in her bedroom. And I have to say, I really wasn't able to console her because I was paddling frantically below the surface.
Paddling frantically below the surface. This is another example, as we've seen dozens of examples now on the channel. I think we saw that specific clip somewhere else before an earlier video. But the McCanns use lots of expressions and word choice that relate to water, like paddling below the surface, staying afloat, even keel. And to me, it's an indicator that they're suppressing memories. When they're talking about Madeleine, they're using the executive function of their brain to suppress memories about what actually happened to her. And when they do that, a little bit of the truth slips out in the words they pick. And they all seem to be nautical related words, which is why I, along with the members of the channel, I have the smarter subscribers, have come to the theory that Madeleine might be somewhere cold, watery, deep, and a well went to the top of our list on the channel of places where Madeleine could be, based on nothing but what the parents have said.
Across the pool.
From the beginning, the search was led by this man, Detective Gonzalo Amaral. From early on, he had his suspicions about the McCanns.
Who do you think are the most likely suspects in this case?
The McCann couple. We were suspicious that an accident could have led to the death of Madeleine.
The lead investigator suspected Kate and Jerry had sedated Madeleine, who'd fallen and died while they were at dinner.
All right, so this is our first time seeing Detective Amaral in any of my videos, even though his name has popped up a lot. And I agree with his theory ever since early on in the case, based on things that early on in our analysis, based on things that the McCanns have said. And sedating Madeleine, I believe what happened is they sedated Madeleine They didn't necessarily have to sedate her more than they normally did. I think it was a regular routine they did at bedtime. They would sedate her so she would sleep and they could relax. And in Portugal, maybe because she was extra dehydrated from playing, or simply because she was in a different setting outside of her home, the sedative hit her differently, and she expired because of that. And the parents, rather than deciding to call the police and report what happened, decided in the heat of the moment, in their fight or flight response, to cover up the crime, to hide her, and to hoax the stranger abduction. And there are a lot more nuance to that that we've developed through the other videos, but that's basically the theory in a nutshell. And it looks like Detective Amaral thinks the same thing, except he adds the little twist that she was sedated. It might have, because she was sedated, it sounds like, fallen over and become contorted in a way where she asphyxiated herself and was unable to correct the issue because she was so sedated.
There is no hint, no proof that the child was kidnapped. On the contrary, there are hints that the parents were negligent, and there are hints there was hiding of the body.
4 months after their daughter.
Also, some people ask in the comments, all right, let's say they were negligent. Let's say they sedated Madeleine. Why would they not just report it and take whatever punishment comes with being negligent? Well, I don't know what the punishment would be in Portugal, but I'm going to show you a clip of what it is in America, and I posted this on X yesterday. Also, let's say people aren't necessarily only afraid of going to jail for doing something wrong, right? They might say, hey, look, the punishment for negligence is 2 years in prison or whatever. But something as small as just the embarrassment of 2 doctors accidentally killing their kid is enough to want to hide it if they think they can get away with it, right? If they find that we did this to Madeleine, we'll lose our medical licenses. They might take the twins away. It will tear up the family. We won't be able to practice medicine. Everything we've worked for our entire lives will be ruined. And she's already dead. Let's just hide her. And the silver lining will be that we keep our family together and we will keep her memory alive, right? I think that's sort of the justification people can come up with in their heads, or at least the McCanns could have come up with. But as far as punishment for negligence, I'm going to show you this quick clip so you can see, at least in America, what the punishment for parental negligence is. All right, so if you're listening on podcast mode, here's what I wrote on this tweet. Why do some parents cover up their child's death instead of immediately calling 911? If they're neglectful or abusive, one reason is the legal consequences. And this is a video of Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusari reacting to their arraignment. So the potential charges they could face after their daughter, 10-month-old Marianne Welch, passed away from malnutrition and dehydration because of their neglect.
It is a felony.
So here's the arraignment. Potential charges.
Bowen Township, that you're both charged with what they call felony murder while in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of child abuse in the first degree. They're alleging that you murdered one Mary Welch. That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole. It requires a DNA sample to be taken upon arrest, which is often like a cotton swab or in the inside of your cheek. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment or any term of years less than life. Now, those are the 2 separate felony charges.
So neglect, like sedating your kid too much and leaving them alone, or sedating your child off-label with a prescription medication, and it leads to their death, is no joke. At least in America, it's life in prison. In the UK, the charges are probably similarly severe. The law rightfully punishes parents who abuse or neglect their children very severely. And that might have also factored in to deciding to cover up their mistakes if something they did contribute to Madeleine's death, rather than calling 911.
Daughter disappeared. The McCanns were declared suspects. Speculation had hit fever pitch.
At times you felt like two lone figures with catapults against an army. You must just feel so helpless.
Suddenly a lot of doors began to close. You know, the UK government and the authorities kind of withdrew, and there was obviously doubt, you know, amongst sectors of the general public. And we really felt hampered then. And the hardest thing, the most upsetting thing for us was that obviously impacts greatly on the search for Madeleine. You know, we need people to be helping us, to be looking for her. So at that point, you know, we felt very alone, and we felt like we were fighting a million battles, to be honest. It was very difficult to counter any kind of negativity in Portugal that was appearing in the media.
That's because under Portuguese law, they were forbidden from speaking out in their own defence.
I can't say anything, I'm afraid. How do you feel?
It was incredibly hard, wasn't it? We were having trial by media with misinformation, lies and smears against us, and the threat of breaking judicial secrecy if we talked about details of the investigation.
The world's media is now camped outside the McCann's villa.
In the meantime, the media was having a field day with leaks from police.
In fact, if we denied something, it gave them the story because we denied it. So half the time we'd ignore stuff. We wouldn't give it the credibility by even commenting on it.
Charges may be laid against the couple next week.
So that appears on the Monday in a paper in Portugal, and we know it's wrong. On Tuesday, it reappears in the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror in London. And then on Wednesday, the mainstream Portuguese press would rerun it, saying it had been run by the established, illustrious Daily Mail of London.
And every time a story about the McCanns ran, circulation soared. It got to the point where the newspapers would run almost anything.
And so it was like this spin cycle of lunacy.
Where the newspapers would run almost anything.
And so it was like this spin cycle of lunacy. And a lot of this stuff would just enter the narrative and would stay there. To this day, I get people saying things that are completely wrong, but they've read it on Facebook, they've seen it on Twitter, so it must be true.
This is another reason I like to analyze the statements of the people involved. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. So everything we've come up with in our theory came directly from the McCanns themselves, which is why I believe it's so pure. We're not getting third-hand knowledge or information from a police report that was originally written in Portuguese, then sent over to the UK and altered some more, and then finally leaked with omissions out to the public. We're getting our story straight from the McCanns and from the words they choose to use to relay their story.
From the beginning, police believed the McCanns had opened Madeleine's window to make it look like a kidnapping.
So you believe that they are lying about the window and when it was opened?
Sim, nós pensamos. Yes, we think it's a lie.
Investigators couldn't find any sign that the window had been forced open or that anyone had used it to enter or exit the apartment.
I'm not sure now, but on the night, the way Kate found the room and with the fact that we were able to raise the shutters, I felt that was how the abductor had got in. We'd left that down all week. We checked the window the first day we were there. We didn't touch the curtains, had remained drawn the whole week. Just wanted to keep their room nice and cool and dark. And I went outside and I was totally aghast that I was able to lift the shutter from the outside.
We just thought you had to use the kind of the pulley mechanism on the inside to open it.
You shouldn't be able to.
And it was like presumed it was like a protective barrier, I guess, outside.
You shouldn't be able to raise them, but this one you could.
How much confusion did this open window cause Portuguese police?
It seems to me that they became more suspicious of the McCanns because of that. Because the McCanns right from the start said, Madeleine's been taken out of that window.
That's exactly what I said. The Portuguese police were rightfully suspicious about that because that is how hoaxers act. They are conclusive about their story because they need you to believe that story. If you don't buy their story, you look at them because they're the obvious suspects. And when I say hoax on my channel, I mean hoax by the fact that it's a false story, so it's more than a lie. A hoax is a false story that's bolstered by fake evidence. So I believe the Ramseys are hoaxers because they lied about what happened to their daughter JonBenét, and then they wrote a fake ransom note, in my opinion, right? So there's a lie with false evidence. Or if you look in my hoaxers playlist, I believe Bob Gimlin is a hoaxer because he lied about seeing Bigfoot and then produced false evidence, a photo of Bigfoot. In the McCann's case, I believe they're hoaxers because they lied about what happened the night Madeleine went missing, and they opened that window to create false evidence about it, right? So they staged the scene. So hoax is more than just telling a lie. It's a lie with additional false physical or testimony evidence.
Professor Dave Barclay is a forensics investigator with 45 years' experience. He travelled to Praia da Luz to investigate the crime in 2007 and says there could be a good reason the window was open.
It's quite possible that that window was opened from the inside by a burglar so that they could get out that way if somebody came in through the other door. Standard.
All right, this is interesting. Why would a burglar come in through a door? Let's say the front door is open, come in, take one kid, and then go through the effort of opening a loud, these are like shutter windows if you're listening on podcast mode. Opening that to leave the house that way, which would obviously draw way more suspicion if anyone were to see them.
Standard practice in reasonably good class burglars to make an exit route for yourself, to open the back door as well. So if somebody comes in the front door, you can just simply run out.
So if it was an intruder who opened the window...
All right, so under this theory, the abductor comes in through the front door, grabs Madeleine, and then there's someone at the front door. So they can't go out that way without being spotted. So they go through the effort of opening the window in the bedroom and going out that way, all while carrying Madeleine under one arm. Possible, yes. Likely, no. Also, it does not explain why the parents would be so insistent about an abductor. See, here's the thing. Once you start rationalizing or digging into the hoax, you go down a rabbit hole. Whereas if you can spot the hoax clearly from the beginning, you can avoid that rabbit hole. So what this guy's saying here is a rabbit hole because it does not explain to us why the parents were so conclusive about the abduction without accusing the other people who were also checking on the children. Why would those not be the first suspects? The fact that they did not suspect any of their friends or the hotel staff and push the narrative of a stranger abductor is the red flag. Everything else is just details, is just rabbit holes. In fact, is just red herrings. For example, in the John Ramsey case, in the JonBenét Ramsey case, if you start going down the rabbit hole of the ransom note, you will miss the forest for the trees. The forest is that it's a 3-page ransom note. Actual kidnappers do not write 3-page ransom notes. That's all you need to know for it to be a hoax. Well, that and other things they said, right? So not just one thing. And If you see my previous videos about how to spot a hoax, there's about 4 things we need to conclude that there's a hoax. But once you're suspicious about it, considering all the minutia of it and the possible avenues is precisely what the hoaxer wants you to do. They want you to focus on, they want you to think past the sale. They want you to believe their hoax and then start focusing your efforts on the narrative that the hoax paints, rather than looking where you should be looking.
The window during an abduction. Who was it? And why did they take Madeleine? With the world's media watching every development, Portuguese police were determined to swiftly solve the mystery of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The lead investigator, Detective Amaral, was convinced Madeleine's parents, Jerry and Kate, were involved.
This was our point of view in 2007, that she was dead.
I mean, the ludicrous thing is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident and we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died? Because the only time she was left unattended was when we were at dinner. So
this is a strange way to phrase. This might be the admission that Mel was talking about. When you listen to Jerry here, listen, is he speaking in the hypothetical? Or is he speaking in the past tense? So, for example, he says, the ludicrous thing is, if Madeleine had not died in the apartment, you'd expect him to say, the ludicrous thing is that Madeleine would have died in the apartment and we would have hidden the body. Right? You put in the hypothetical, the conditional, because it didn't actually happen. If you put in the past tense, it seems like what you're doing is you're mocking people who accuse you of doing something that actually happened. And mockery is a great sign of deception. When people call something ludicrous or crazy, we used mockery to determine on this channel that Liver King was taking steroids before he confessed to it. We used mockery to catch Nadia Amine cheating on Warzone games. And the reason that we don't see too much mockery in these true crime videos we've been doing recently is because it's only very, very bad liars who resort to mockery. So we haven't seen it in a while. But it looks like Jerry's doing mockery, and he's slipping up and speaking about Madeleine dying in the apartment in the past tense rather than the conditional. Does this mean this is a confession that's admissible in court and we should go arrest him? No. Everything I do on the channel should not be admissible in court. Statement analysis is a great way, and deception detection are a great way to get to the physical evidence. By listening to what people say and allowing that to direct the scope of our investigation, we can allocate money better, decide where to look more, decide who to suspect, but it's not tangible proof. We can use it to get the proof that we need. For example, how we use their leakage to come to the confident conclusion, right, to build up our confidence that Madeleine is probably in a well somewhere within a day's drive of the hotel. That's from the analysis we've done. But until we find that body and are able to tie it back to the McCanns, for example, if it's in a gym bag with only their fingerprints on it or something, or, she's super, they find sedatives. I don't even know if they could do that anymore, right? If they were able to test it to find an overdose or blunt force trauma by something that the parents had on them in the hotel. But my point is that when we hear these red flags like an embedded confession, which I think we just did, which I will replay right now, it should direct us, but it's not enough to convict someone. I do believe, no matter how convinced I am, that someone I'm analyzing is guilty, and I do believe the McCanns know more than they're telling us. We need to be beyond a reasonable doubt in order to convict somebody. That should always be the standard. However, just like my analogy of poker chips, if I'm betting, I'm betting they know something. I'm betting they're guilty.
This was
And the good news is, when you learn these lessons about detecting lies in your own personal life, you're not on a jury convicting or condemning someone to death or decades in prison. You can use these skills to make better decisions about who to trust, where to spend your money, what medicine to take. Do you trust your doctor? Are they hedging? Do you trust your attorney, realtor, friend, significant other, children if they tell you that they didn't do drugs or they did? So the decisions you make are a lot more low stakes in real life. So if you can use these skills, you'll make more correct decisions about who to trust, who to disbelieve, what to investigate further. But since we're teaching these lessons in the setting of true crime, it's important to say that even if we have an embedded confession here, it's not enough to convict Jerry. But it is enough for me to bet that they know something. So let's listen to Jerry again here.
This was our point of view in 2007, that she was dead.
I mean, the ludicrous thing is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident.
The ludicrous thing is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident. That's 100% in past tense. Madeleine died. Not that the ludicrous thing would have been if Madeleine died. He's speaking directly in the past tense here.
Accident, and we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died? Because the only time...
When did she have the accident and died? Not when would she have had this supposed accident.
Only time she was left.
So right here we have the embedded confession. We have an embedded confession through the tense that Jerry is using. He's not speaking about Madeleine dying in the hypothetical or the conditional. He's speaking about it in the past tense. But not only that, we also have mockery about how ludicrous this idea is. And we also have questions, him trying to gather information from us about what we know. How could this have happened? All right, this did happen, let's say, hypothetically. How did it happen? When did we do it? What did we do afterwards with the body? So he's basically fishing for information, but as he does that, he doesn't realize that he's speaking about this in the past tense. So through his words, he's telling us, this is what happened, but you still need to prove it.
Left unattended was when we were at dinner. So if she died then, how could we have disposed or hidden her body, when there was an immediate set? It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in the apartment or fell and did something, why would we cover that up?
Listen to all these hypothetical questions. I've never seen him so nervous. Let's listen again. Listen to the questions he's asking. It's almost like a magic trick. So when people ask me, well, when did Madeleine die? How could they have hid their body, right? So they're basically asking all the questions that Jerry just asked. How could that have been done? Well, it's not up to me to know that. It's up to me to point it out that it likely happened. For example, imagine that you are Kate and Jerry. Your life depends on hiding this body. Don't you think you would be very creative and very desperate about how you did it? Don't you think you would debate it and do things that other people couldn't even imagine you doing to your daughter out of desperation? And whenever people ask me that, well, how did they hide the body? How could they have done this? How could they have done that? It's like a magic trick. Just because you can't figure it out, right? Just because you can't figure it out in the few seconds or a few minutes you're dedicating to thinking of it, doesn't mean that they couldn't figure it out. Right? When you see a magic trick on stage, you think that's impossible. How could they possibly do that? Well, they're doing it. And it's because the magician has thought about it. The magician has sent you in red herrings. Maybe the red herring of theirs is the day she died. Maybe she didn't die the exact time they said she did. Maybe they stashed the body for a few hours so they'd have an alibi that this happened while they were at dinner. Maybe they proposed the idea that everyone check the room every 30 minutes so that when she did disappear, they would look like they have clean hands. How could we have possibly have done this? So the fact that we can't explain it right away within a few minutes of considering it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. And once it is figured out, it will seem obvious, right? Just like every magic trick.
That she was dead.
I mean, the ludicrous thing is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident.
So listen to the mockery as well, right? It's ludicrous.
And we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died?
And then listen to the hypothetical questions, right? So the fishing for information, the trial balloons. Well, when did she have this accident? So he's not saying there was no accident, right? He's not saying Madeleine did not die in the apartment. She was kidnapped. He's just putting the doubt out there, the little trial balloons of doubt. Well, when did she have this accident?
Right. Because the only time she was left unattended was when we were at dinner. So if she died then, how could we have disposed or had?
How could we have disposed her? Also, listen how he uses the word disposed about his daughter. Why not buried? How could we have buried her? Or how could we have gotten rid of her? Disposed. Maybe they hid her in a trash can. Maybe they put her in a trash bag. There's a reason he used the word disposed.
Hidden her body, when there was an immediate threat. It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in there?
It's nonsense. It's ludicrous. It's nonsense. How could she have died? How could we have disposed her? So he's throwing out lots of mockery and these trial balloons of questions. And we've seen liars act exactly like this. This is how Liver King acted when he was confronted with taking steroids. It's how every cheater we've analyzed on the channel reacts when they're accused of cheating.
In the apartment, or fell and did something. Why would we cover that up?
Right? Why would we cover that up? Well, I already pointed out why someone would cover it up. It could be as insignificant as being embarrassed that you accidentally killed your daughter. Just the shame, right? If these are narcissistic people, just the embarrassment alone of being the parents who accidentally killed their daughter on vacation would be enough to cover it up. Right? People on my channel who are watching this, we're normal people. We don't think like that. But other people can. In a fight or flight, extreme stakes situation, I can imagine them saying, look, she's already dead. We screwed up. Do we really need the embarrassment of being found out that we killed her, losing our medical licenses, potentially having Child Protective Services come take our children away, our remaining children, or should we just cover it up? And I've got a very clever way we can cover it up. Listen to how clever I am.
Detective Amaral brought in 2 sniffer dogs, Eddie and Keela, from the UK. He claimed the dogs found traces of Madeleine's DNA in a car hired by the McCanns weeks after she disappeared.
So that is interesting as well. So Jerry said disposed, and I said she could have been hidden in a trash can somewhere. Just because that's what you do with trash, you dispose of it. So they could have stored her somewhere cold. I've seen some comments about them replacing the refrigerator in their room. I don't know if that's true or not, because they haven't spoken about it. And I like to follow what they say themselves, not outside information that is just simply reported. But if that is true that they replaced the refrigerator, it might be because they stored her somewhere cold. They put her in the fridge. Then once the heat was off, once the roadblocks were down, they were able to drive her far away and dispose of her and hide the body in a well or somewhere cold and wet, like I said before, based on their leakage.
The fluid is a 90% match with the profile of Madeleine McCann.
He believed they'd hidden her body at the beach, then used a rental car to move it to a more remote place.
Wow. This is crazy that we have come up with this theory. So this is crazy. So we've come up with this theory over the course of 15 videos, And we've analyzed it, nothing but what the parents have said themselves. And now we have the head investigator, the head detective on the case, basically reciting our theory based on the physical evidence he examined. That is a good sign for us. That is a good sign that we are on the right track. He's basically echoing things that we've seen in the language since day one, and he is echoing it based on the physical evidence he's seen.
Gets even more ludicrous that we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well where nobody's found her. We hid her so well that we...
Wow. Let's listen again.
To move it to a more remote place.
Gets even more ludicrous that we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well where nobody's found her. We hid her so well that we then decided we'd move her in the car, which we hired weeks later. And, it's just ridiculous.
Here we have an embedded confession, the likes of which we've never seen before on the channel. Not only is it detailed, but she put everything in the past tense. So she didn't say, well, if we had done that, or if we did that. She says, we did this, we did that, we did X, Y, and Z. But also, she used the word well. Well is something that we've developed over the course of 15 videos, hours of watching the McCanns, and nothing but the McCanns' own words. And based on the words they use, the expressions they choose to use, their leakage, we came up on this channel with the theory that Madeleine is likely in a well or a deep, dark crevice somewhere. And now we have Kate using the word well. This might seem like a big leap to you, but it is the payoff of hours of analysis of nothing but their own words, not newspaper rumors or third parties saying things, but things that they've said themselves. So let's listen to Kate again. Listen to the tense she uses, right? Is this conditional, hypothetical, or is it past tense? Listen to the things she points out, the specificity of the steps they would have had to take, and her use of the word well.
He believed they'd hidden her body at the beach, then used a rental car to move it to a more remote place.
Gets even more ludicrous that we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well.
Past tense, we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well.
Where nobody's found her. We hid her so well that we then decided we'd move her in the car.
We hid her so well. Not that we would have had to hide her so well. And then we would have had to, right? That's how you would expect someone to speak when they're speaking hypothetically. But she's speaking in the past tense. So here we have two embedded confessions in this interview. We have Jerry basically telling us how we came up with the idea that Madeleine died. He basically confirmed it with his own words. And now we have Kate telling us how they got rid of the body.
Which we hired weeks later. And, it's just ridiculous.
Could that DNA categorically prove that it belonged to Madeleine?
No, that was the point.
All right, so we're an hour in. We've seen some bombshells here. I hope that you understand how odd it is that they spoke in the past tense rather than the conditional when they were talking about Madeleine dying in the apartment and when they were talking about hiding Madeleine in the beach and then moving the body. That is not how we would expect an innocent person to talk, because an innocent person would be speculating about these ludicrous theories, not putting them in the past tense. All right, so now let's do my favorite part of every video now, which is to look at the top comments from the previous video in the series. And before we do that, I'll just quickly say we're 23 minutes into a 38-minute documentary, so we will do a part 3, so make sure to subscribe and save the playlist so that you get notified, turn on your notifications when I do part 3, so we can finish up this documentary together and see if there's any more bombshells, and then reevaluate all our theories based on what we've seen and seems to have been confirmed in this documentary. All right, so let's look at some of the top comments from my last video in this series. What does an embedded confession look like? All right, so the top comment here is from Mega Moshi 123. I remember the parents were told Madeleine wasn't feeling very well when they collected the kids from the Creche Kids Club. I was very surprised they still went out that evening and left her alone. Personally, I'd have stayed in and got Jerry, our friend, to bring my food to the apartment, especially as she had been crying the night before, as she apparently woke up and asked where they were. Very strange parenting from all in the group. And I think that is a great comment. Yes, if Madeleine was not feeling well, you would expect that the parents might have taken that into consideration before deciding to leave her alone in the bedroom. It seems to be, this is the problem with hoaxes. There's so many little gaps in the way people act because it's almost impossible to predict how someone in that exact situation would act. Next comment from Astrin Maris. There's another possibility. Instead of the meds knocking her out all night, Madeleine awoke. Maybe due to a build-up tolerance or Madeleine outgrowing her previous dose. She starts playing in the apartment, falls, and dies of whatever injuries she received. One theory is that she fell behind the couch, couldn't free herself, and died of positional asphyxia. This would explain the cadaver dog alerting behind the couch, and other guests hearing a small child crying and calling for her daddy one night. I also 100% want to have a collab between you and Peter Hyatt. I think it would be very interesting. So this seems to be the Detective Amaral theory. So he thinks that it wasn't just the sedatives alone that killed her if she was killed in the apartment, but the sedatives plus being left alone in the bedroom leading to an unfortunate accident. And I don't think there's anything in the language that negates that. So that is definitely a possibility. That lines up with everything we've seen in the analysis so far in the words that they use. Regarding Peter Hyatt, yeah, that would be great. I think Peter Hyatt's work on this case is amazing. And his work in general as a statement analyst are amazing. So please, if you want to see a collab between me and him, do drop some comments on his videos. Thank you to everyone who dropped the comments on Pat Brown's video, because that actually led to us having a little exchange of videos and sharing our thoughts together. So if there is someone you want to see me collab with or interact with on YouTube who might have good insights that can challenge or support my own, the best way to do that is just comment on their videos, and maybe they'll read those comments and make a reaction, and then we can kick off trading back and forth videos or commentary, which is fun. One of the most viewed videos in this series is the one where I reacted to Pat Brown reacting to me. All right, so let's skip around a little bit here. This one is one that I hearted when I first read it. This is from G-Dog. I'm wondering about the book teeth bed. I've had 2 children, plus looked after little children. Kate says Maddie was tired after a long day. Parents speak for whining being difficult, overtired, so they did teeth bed sedative book. It really was to put her to sleep. The detectives commented that the twins didn't wake up when there was a huge commotion going on outside. It certainly makes one wonder about the veracity of the parents' storyline. So I like this comment because I do think the commenter is right, and this is something that I missed early on when we first watched this video. When Kate said Maddie was tired, when children are tired, that's usually when they're grumpy and being difficult, and the euphemism for that is to say that the kid is tired. So I do think that it might explain why they would have possibly even over-sedated or given Maddie a little bit more sedative that night if she was being tired, i.e. grumpy, crying a lot, upset, not behaving. This comment is from channel member Sophia Brayland. Thank you, Sophia, for being a member of the channel. And she says, to think that your child has been abducted right away has always seemed so strange to me. My son disappeared when we were on vacation. I often think about my thought process during that incident as compared to what the McCanns did, and we differ so much. My instant thought was that he had run off, and my greatest fear was that he had fallen into one of the pools. And she goes on to describe her thought process, and I think this is actually the thought process of most parents, right? If you've ever lost your kid in the mall or the grocery store, your first thought is not that someone kidnapped them, right? It is definitely a fear. It might even be a priority thought, but it's not your only thought. Your first thought is that they've wandered off, and that's why you go looking for them, or shouting their name, calling out their name, rather than calling 911 immediately. Right? So it might be one of your thoughts. It might not be your first thought, however, and it certainly is not your only thought. And the big red flag of the McCanns, and the thing that first pointed me in the direction that this might be a hoax, was the fact that they thought only that it was an abduction, and not just an abduction, because they didn't consider hotel staff or their friends, but a stranger abduction. So the specificity and the conclusiveness they had so early on was a red flag for a hoax. I've also posted this video in the members section, so if you are a member, feel free to drop your thoughts. After we finish up this documentary, I'm going to be pointing out my favorite catches from the members section, from the members who commented on this video, who have lots of great catches, and we're going to wrap up the series by looking at their comments and their insights into the video, things that I might not have caught, insights they might have that I don't have. So I think that will be fun when we do part 3. So if you are a member, please do consider finishing the rest of this documentary. The link is here in the members section, and then dropping your insights. And if you already are a member, thank you. Please do consider watching the video and dropping your insights here. We have about 150 members of the channel now, so thank you to everyone who's a member. And I want to hear your thoughts and your commentary on this case if you do watch ahead and finish the documentary, and mark your thoughts down here so we can compare your analysis and mine when we do the 3rd installment of this video. Until next time, stay true.